All right. Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome back to Melanin and Moonlight. I am one of your hosts, Tyrell Collins.
And I'm the other Vernon Scott. Welcome.
Oh
How
my,
have you been?
we don't even know how to start this. It feels like it feels like it's been like 5 years, but we know it's only been so many months since we,
Right.
have, gotten together. So just Bertie, how is everything with you? What has been going on? How has your new year been?
This new year has been, I would say it has been new energy. Like I was talking to my brother like a couple weeks ago, and I told him like, um, personally things are going well. But then of course globally or just outside of that, it's like we're kind of like going through a whole lot of mess. But I'm feeling grateful for at least where I'm standing in all of this, and you and making space for the external stuff whenever I can because it's too much sometimes, but at least acknowledging where I'm at may be a little bit stable and just enjoying that for a little while. So that's how I've been doing. What about you?
No, I completely feel the same. I feel like for as much of a mess and chaos as the world is, my world is actually pretty much a lot at peace. Like,
Yes.
I don't really make New Year's resolutions and things like that, but the one thing I did say moving into this year is that, I know things are going to bother me, so that's a lie if I said that. But I'm trying not to let things get to me as much. Like,
Mm,
of course I'm bothered by it, but I'm not being reactive to it, really.
mm,
It's like, okay, that happened, or so and so said something. That's nice. So
right.
it's like, because it's like I just moving, officially moving to a new place, still getting settled into my job, things like that. It's just I'm not in the headspace to deal with foolishness. I'm really not.
Right, right. It reminds me of something I was listening to Crystal's Couch, and it was the episode with I forgot the therapist's name, but they were talking about like once you do the self work, once you go to therapy, or once you really start to work on yourself, your tolerance for other people's BS goes completely to the ground. It's just like I just don't have the capacity to deal with whatever BS you got. I'm at peace. I'm happy here, and you trying to interfere with it, I'm just not gonna
Look,
give it to you.
I have my place, I have my food, my drinks, and my therapy videos. I'm good.
Listen, having a good time. Like, don't have it in me to give any more than I have. So it's just it's a beautiful place to be, overall. So, and I'm loving it.
And so, officially, obviously, for all of our listeners and all of our watchers out there, officially happy 2026 to everybody. Welcome
Yes,
to the new
yes.
year. We hope everybody's new year is going great.
Right. Yes. Welcome. Welcome. All right. You ready to dive into these things?
I am ready.
So to start the conversation off, y'all, we're going to hit on some controversy that happened with political commentary, radio personality. The man has a lot of hats, as well as surprisingly a lot of degrees, and some of those may be fraudulent. We're talking about Dr. Rashad Richey, and personally, I've enjoyed, watching his content and supporting, him over the years. Granted, my viewership of just because I was mostly seeing him on a channel called The Young Turks, TYT, for those who are familiar with it, I've really detached myself from the TYT space some years ago, which reminds me I really do need to update that thing in my book. That's like, hey, y'all want to, see some progressive information? Go look at TYT. It's different now, but Seeing Dr. Rashad Richey was very inspiring because, it's like I love seeing brilliant black men in these spaces, having these conversations, pushing back on racism and all this other stuff. And just to find out, because there was a recent deep dive into some of his background where it was exposed that some of his accolades were from diploma mills. And I, on some level, I'm like, for knowing some of his background, I can see why a person may fall um, victim to some of the diploma mills that are out there. But there's also, an aspect of being intentional about engaging in diploma mills and getting these degrees in order to make yourself look good without just to be like I have the titles, therefore because I have the titles, I'm an authority on something. And it was very disappointing for me to like really see this unfold because it's like of course, it's the flaw of, the parasocial relationships, but I expected better, right?
Mm,
Because you present yourself as doing and being better. So I was hoping for that to be the the case here. Like there's a moment of, okay, I did these. There are some false claims here, and I'm going to take ownership of that and do my work to make sure that I'm in this space correctly, but I don't see that happening.
mm.
So wanted to, get your perspective on some of this, Tyrell, as well.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting, kind of aspect to kind of delve into because I think, when we think about how do, essentially social media or public figures, right, build their case. And then I think with when it comes to like social media influencers and things like that, I think that we're automatically trained to detect BS because we know that when people are promoting their brands and things like that, like I think we've gotten to be, I think, pretty savvy as a audience, as a people, to know when somebody's like selling us a bunch of BS when it comes to like regular influencer type things. But it's a different aspect when somebody is misappropriating their like educational credentials, or it's not easily verified because it's the intention of maybe wanting to put out a good message, but not having the actual backing, or feeling like you have the actual backing to stand on it. And to me, it's just always not necessary because my thing is always like, why lie or why try to frame something that's, that's not. So when we have somebody, like Richard, who, like his platform is pretty much leveraging essentially
Hmm.
like the, black identity, cultural, proximity to run essentially manipulative schemes on people who look like, who people who look like
Hmm.
him. It's really about does how we take community trust and we weaponize it
Exactly,
you know
exactly.
so I think that's the biggest thing, I think, to you know take a to kind of like look at this from damn near everything, as somebody said, everything you need to know about faking degrees is contained within this one man.
Hmm. The thing that really gets me about it is like I'm a full supporter of having education from outside of the US, right? And even if it's not fully transferable, because I do feel like some of the standards that we have in the US does not correlate for other countries, especially countries that outperform us in K-12. So it's like their standard of education may be a lot more superior than what we may have here in the States. But at the same time, it is important to recognize that some degrees just aren't transferable,
Mhm,
right? Even if they are here in the United States, because there's certain standards and regional accreditation is there for a reason.
mhm,
And to tout yourself as, you know, earning certain degrees that are not necessarily transferable to the US in some way, are not aligning with how we will practice or utilize certain degree mechanics within the US, it really does beg to question like, okay, so what are we really doing here? That's like nothing against the religious schools that exist here in the US, but there's been a lot that have started just to claim that people are getting bachelor's degrees when the bachelor's degrees that they're providing are equivalent to a certificate, right? That they're not any education that has been really um, evaluated, assessed by anybody in like the Department of Education to ensure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's non-accredited, or we create a new accrediting body in order for us to say that it's accredited by this institution rather than widely recognized as a education system. Like, it's our job to do the due diligence of proving the education is being worthy. And I get for like people who are like 19, 20, very young, as they're trying to find an education source for them, how they can easily fall into these traps for not knowing. But once you get a bachelor's degree, once you get an associate's degree, once you get a degree at a let's say a brick and mortar school, you tend to be able to identify that, okay, something about this seems a little fishy because
Mhm.
they're promising this degree in a year. And this degree doesn't have a straight plan. They're only saying that there's only credit hours that you can earn if you just, watch all these videos, and one video is like 5 credit. Like this is not appropriate in terms of educating yourself.
I think that there is a difference because, like you were saying, when it comes to like these diploma mills, these fake programs, this kind of like international kind of loophole, it's really one of those things like that when we talk about like the international programs claim, when
Hmm.
institutions that don't have an infrastructure, right? We
Hmm.
have, in these kind of situations, programs that don't actually exist at the name school. We have like these overly broad, very flashy interdisciplinary labels. And of course, as you and I, as we both come from, the academic world, and things like that, we, notice a difference of, yes, one of the main things I always promote to, students is that you can essentially do anything that you want to because so many fields have become interdisciplinary. But there's a
Hmm.
difference between something being interdisciplinary and like, okay, having quantum physics plus philosophy as like this kind of mashed up thing. Like, okay, this is
Hmm.
maybe something that sounds interesting, but I'm gonna, like you say, I'm gonna look into this a little bit more. Looking
Hmm.
at these websites, like when people are listing things and, we're trying to check for quality. So again, it's all to say, like, I think when it comes to aspects like this, how as you were mentioning, even from an international standpoint, these kind of like global aesthetics can really like
Hmm.
function almost like a credibility costume. Like, right, it sounds
Hmm.
impressive, and most audiences won't verify it.
Exactly. Like I remember hearing one of the things that he had a doctorate in, and my immediate thought was, "Oh, that's a very specific
Mhm.
doctorate to be out there." Not to dismiss it as being something that's possible, because it was something about doctorate in criminal justice or racial injustice or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, that's very specific. Maybe he's." Mentioning that claiming the doctorate within this field, however, utilizing what he researched as like what he got his doctorate in, meaning I'm credentialed and studied in this specific area because my black ass is over here like, how specific of programs do they have out there? Like, this is beautiful to know that this exists, but how does one know, or how does one find that this particular school has this specific um, doctorate that focuses solely on that? And I'm just like, because I know, like, for me, doing specializing in sex therapy, right? I couldn't just say that, oh, I'm going to specialize in rape trauma and blah 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 because I couldn't find a program that only focused on that. There was only generalized studies, and even within the sex therapy, I still had to make sure the research that I did to learn therapeutic approaches and all of that catered towards my preferred specialized clients. So
Exactly.
it's like, why, where is this coming from? How do we find this?
Exactly. Yeah. And even in like my field of if English and teaching education, of course, like my doctorate, of course, is in English first and foremost. But of
Mm,
course, I have a concentration in rhetoric and composition. So that's my specialization. Or
hmm
even like for my MFA, like, yeah, the MFA is a creative arts degree. My specialization is in fiction. So it's kind of like you're saying, typically the way that programs and, schooling, no matter if you're online, in person, things like that, the way that it's set up is that you will go into a general kind of field. And then as you
hmm
work in that field, you become more, kind of specialized. And, for all of our people that's out here listening to us, I think that this is a great way to talk about certain things that you can do to verify,
mm,
so like checking, accreditation lists. So is this particular institution that this person is mentioning, are they actually accredited? People have to list that they are accredited on their websites. Otherwise, they are in
hmm
violation to be shut
Exactly.
down or, things like that. Looking for degree programs that actually exist, right? This is all information that's readily available to us. We just got to do the work, right? Even if you're thinking about from a domain ownership, kind of trail, or, noticing internal inconsistencies, right? Wait a minute, like these dates are shifting, these titles are changing, these department chair, like all of this is, kind of like in flux. So like what's going on,
hmm
right? So it's really, I think, a conversation like this, and what's going on is how do we make ourselves more in the internet era, kind of like how do we make sure we do these checklists for credibility and responsibility?
Exactly. And to double back on something that was mentioned earlier, it is 100% okay to go to a foreign school
Yeah.
and get an education, but it's important to know whether or not that's going to transfer back over to the US. Like something I have planned for myself is if I ever get the opportunity to, is to teach overseas
Mhm.
on the collegiate level because I would enjoy doing that. I feel like it would be a wonderful experience for myself. But I also know just because I happen to be a U.S. citizen that the students that I teach overseas may not be able to get their degree transferred over to the US. Like I even had to have the conversation with the client about oh, you're because their degree is from overseas. You're looking to get go further your education here in the States. Well, just so that you're aware, you might end up having to get a GED in order for you to really go through your process of getting these advanced degrees that you want. You may have to look at doing a bachelor's again, then going into a master's, then going into a doctor. You have to do a lot of this because for whatever reason, where you started is not even going to be looked at as having a high school education sometimes. And it's unfortunate for you because you know that your things,
Mhm.
but that's just how this education system work. The same way if I with my collegiate background, some of what I studied may not transfer over if I decide to go to the UK and work over there. So I may have to also go back to school just so I could join their workforce. So
Mhm.
it's just knowing what is and is not going to be transferable. And it's helpful to do that extra digging so that
Mhm.
you know that, okay, regardless of what happens, I will be okay listing this on my resume, having them go further back and review and check in to verify that this education is actually valid.
Yeah. Yeah, and even getting into, Richard, it just kind of like I love how when of course, these talks about him did come out. Like you had a lot of people that were kind of spotting this kind of double bind in his what, like I study rhetoric,
Hmm.
defending schools as accredited or legitimate, and then pivoting to learning outside the box where like approval doesn't matter. So even
Hmm.
our takeaway from something like that is like when someone argues kind of like both sides, they're really optimizing their routes for escape because
Exactly.
they're not trying to get to a truth, right?
Exactly.
So we have to be very, kind of of course, again, cautious about that. And a lot of times where, what this tells us is that even when somebody is trying to defend their position because either they've been caught or, they're trying to state about what their intention is, a strong critique is always going to include concessions about
Mm,
something because concessions make the critique harder to dismiss as hate, right? So it is to say that this it's brought up about when it came out about the whole aspects about like Clark Atlanta and just
mm,
all these things, it's really this and Dartmouth, I know that that was that had been brought up and things like that. So when credibility depends, when we can critique it, right, it depends on what we refuse to speculate about.
mm.
So it's a sad thing, but I think that it's a very important kind of conversation to have. And yeah, I just for anyone that has fell victim to it or had a bit of blinders on, it's not anything that's innately, oh, you should have known, or things like that. It's just what can we take away from the experience and
Hmm.
learn how to operate and realize better.
Exactly. And to to the double speaks credit a little bit, not too much now. I'm not trying to excuse them. Like yes, if there's opportunities for you to learn something that's outside of the traditional, right, go ahead and take it, right? But also recognize that the thing that you're learning, it may not lead anywhere in terms of like professional development, or that it may not just be considered bachelor's associate. It may not lead to a degree, right? But if you want to learn material, learn information, don't let official or accreditation be the thing that keep you from, learning it. Like the Udemy courses, the Google Scholar stuff that you may find. Great, you get to learn that, enjoy that, and, build some kind of sense of understanding, but you also have to recognize that some of this information may have some falsehood to it as well, because it's not something that is, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with A. I mean, a R. Not redistribute. Um,
Research.
Not researched. Regulated. There we go. It's not something that is regulated or evaluated on a regular basis. So there may be some flaws in the material too, which is okay.
Exactly. And I say to just be upfront and be honest about it. I mean, you have so many people now that are creating obviously their own platforms to dispense information. And my thing has always been, no matter what I believe that obviously we all have a right to our platforms. We all have a right to say what we want. Obviously, if you are somebody that is delivering a message or delivering content, yes, you do have responsibility. But I think also, as we talk about in my field, talk about ethos, credit, and credibility. I think if you are upfront and honest about the fact that, hey, I may be coming from an angle that may be outside of higher education or peer reviewed research or something like that, if you're upfront and honest about that, then at least you're keeping your credibility intact to for whoever it is that's following you or who comes to talk with you or you're dispensing information to. You're not operating in a lie because you've already said up front about what this is. And
Mm.
again, just giving people the nature of choice, like, so nobody wants to feel duped or anything like that, so just be honest.
Exactly. Oh, well, speaking of choice and being honest, I think that's a great way of transitioning into this next person. Which we've spoken about him on the podcast in the past. Feel free to go back and, it was a lot more praiseworthy because it's like, hey, we understand, we want you to do great. Come on out the closet because we love you and the work that you've done so far. Donnie McClurkin, come on and stand in this room. I understand we fall down and we get back up, but sir, we need to go ahead and talk to you about some of the things that's just recently came out because
Don't
homosexuality, listen,
come to the front.
come to the front. To the front. Homosexuality does not give you any type of excuse to be an abuser. It just does not. And for those who are unaware, there has been some recent allegations that have come out about Donnie McClurkin and alleged abuse to someone who was in his care. It was a parishioner. I forgot his name, um, but it's
Giuseppe Corletto.
I think so.
Yeah, I can't pronounce. I can't necessarily
Yeah.
pronounce.
I'll make sure it's in the show notes for everybody. So this is a younger man, younger than McClurkin, who was struggling with his sexual identity, feeling as though his sexual identity was something that was wrong, and rather than just being there as support, Donnie McClurkin allegedly brought him under his wing and attempted to pressure um, the victim in this case for sex. Proposed the opportunity, well, proposed sex multiple times, pressured them into sex, and there was also mentioning that he did attempt penetration or it was completed penetration. I forget the exacts on that. And he's looking for justice for him, which I hope he finds. That's how I stand on anything when it comes to any victims of sexual abuse, sexual assault. And there's also conversations and emails from Don McClurkin apologizing and mentioning that he still has his own demons that he's trying to fight and his approach to assisting him was wrong and that he still wants the guy to, still be a member of the church to, you know, under a different guise of the relationship. So
Yeah.
that's the background.
Yeah, and I
Thoughts?
do think, it is important to, also state that, of course, because of the fact this is still ongoing, it's being investigated, that, of course, these are allegations, not legal findings. So, we just want to put that out there.
Mhm.
But it is to say, like, I think we are continuously, of course, having these conversations around the church and specifically the Black church confronting the nature of uh, sexual abuse, homosexuality and abuse among, church folks, among the clergy, should I say. And, I think just investigating what it means to, how can I put this kind of like institutional,
Mhm.
kind of aspect, and especially around, as as we've talked about, many times before, abuse at the core is always about power, secrecy, lack of accountability, right? So it should not have anything, of course, to do with sexual orientation, how how someone identifies, things like that. And I think that for the allegations that have been made, um, for Donnie McClurkin, it's like, okay, having this, trusted figure. Again, we've spoken about this in the past. The power imbalance, that's there, uh, spiritual wise, age wise, guy, guidance wise. It's kind of like we can go on and on. Um, and it's just honestly just a sad situation to
Mhm.
to hear about, especially if you are someone that follows Donnie McClurkin or, things like that. But again, I think when it comes to, aspects like this, we need to really really investigate about how, as we talked about before, how we put public figures on these pedestals.
Mm,
And I think one of the reasons, I'm not going to say reason, but I'm very curious to, just kind of know internally, like, why is it, around these past few years and things like that, like all of these things are all of a sudden like coming out. And again, thinking about like these things have, of course, like are not just all of a sudden, like they've been happening, but like what is really happening in society, or even if we want to take it to a higher power, the universe is happening where these things are being, kind of talked about now. So I really wanted to pose that question to you. Like,
mm,
do you sense there's something happening with society, media, things like that, that is making so that we're having these allegations to come forward, regardless, obviously, whether or not they're true or not. But like, what's pushing these
mhm.
these aspects, to the forefront?
I feel like a lot of this is a consequence from a lot of the online conspiracies
Mhm.
and then attaching um I don't want to say because I know the Me Too movement had some influence of this. However, I don't want to say that's the driving force because the Me Too women, the Me Too movement, in and of itself, even though not explicitly and not necessarily the focus, per se, mostly highlighted women's trauma. And as a patriarchal society, we don't give a crap about whatever women got going on. So that's why there was a lot more pushback. But in addition to that, because we have the conspiracies going on about, with Epstein and whatnot, and what's going on with children, it gave rise to more people finding just general sexual assault as being a bad thing, right? Because it's more or less, even though we can blame the women, because that's what the society tells us to do, we're not willing to blame the children.
Mhm.
And for that point alone, we get more people recognizing that, oh wait, men get sexually assaulted, in oftentimes in a way of combating the sexual assault of women, but they're acknowledging that this does happen. So because we have more people acknowledging that this stuff happens, and as it occurs, and people are finding more voice because they see more people advocating about how bad it is across the board, I feel like it gives people more courage to speak out for themselves as well. To mention that, hey, this is what ha happened to me. And also just seeing some of the powerful figures actually be held semi-accountable for it too. Meaning, okay, maybe my voice will finally be heard here, because I've been telling myself there's no way possible for me to speak up and something good will happen in my favor. So I think that's why we see a lot more of it.
And, and I think that, when these kind of aspects are coming up, I know for me, a lot of times I refrain from making any type of like snap judgment. It's like, oh yeah, if I see something, I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But you have a lot of people, especially with what has happened with the whole aspects of like R. Kelly and Diddy
Mm,
and things like that that we've talked about. When you have situations like this, a lot of people will bring up, well, why did the, accusers not go to the police? Why did, that person have continued contact, with this person, in this case, McClurkin, if that occurred? And a lot of times people are ignoring that survivors in general obviously often delay reporting due to a lot of things: shame, fear, if you are not, of course, from the U.S., look at what's happening with our society right now with ICE, immigrations, with, immigration status. And then when we talk specifically about the church, there is or religious aspects, there is the very ingrained aspect of spiritual manipulation,
Mm,
right? And so when we think about all these things that can be done under coercive dynamics, it's not just as simple. It's just as simply as black and white. It's like, oh, yeah, they could have gone to the police. Oh, they could have just cut off contact, right? It's a very mental, kind of manipulation when any type of abuse that goes on. Plus, obviously, the physical. And what have, obviously, so a lot of survivors have said about the nature of abuse. What, something has been done to me physically, I can recover much more faster than what has been done to me mentally. Because the mental is what breaks down your confidence. It indulges the fear that you have. So the mental is so much, of a plummet,
hmm
than anything else.
Exactly. Exactly. It's I hate that this is where we are. I hate that the victimization continues. I love that there's more people willing to speak out and name their abusers to find their sense of justice because it's needed. And who knows if there's more? And that one person can really be a catalyst for a lot of the retribution that's needed for many. And I'm hoping that there's not more allegations that come out, Donnie. But if there are, the way that, these just people with wealth operate in this country, I wouldn't be surprised if there are more. So,
Exactly. Yeah. And, and now because of the fact that, it seems like these allegations are made public now so regularly, I think with every case that comes about, it makes others that more emboldened to like share their experiences.
mhm,
Um, and share what has happened. And again, it's up to everybody to decide whether or not what they believe, what they don't, things like that. That's really, your own personal viewpoint. I just, as we're talking about, I just think that the time and the era in which we're living in is
mhm,
a very, kind of interesting point to, kind of bring up, these aspects that, I don't know if we've really, taken time to really think about essentially. It's like, what does accountability look like, in the church, when
mhm,
things like this happen. And also kind of remembering that what's on trial here, if the allegations do proceed, is how power is exercised when you have a situation like this that has happened that includes mentorship, it includes ministry, it includes vulnerability, these things that are intersecting. So I think questions like for all of us to think about is how should, I'm just going to say faith communities, to kind of pull it largely, how should faith communities, right, again, investigate allegations involving, the clergy? What
mhm,
does real accountability look like? you know why do we struggle really to hold beloved figures to the same demands that we look at as far as the institution goes,
mhm,
right? And then most importantly, speaking, from a, kind of queer perspective, how can we talk about the nature of abuse without demonizing queerness?
mm,
That is always, ingrained into, people's comments and conversations. And it's just, it's so sad.
yeah. Well,
So yeah, just to, just kind of, just come to some concluding thoughts on the whole McClurkin, allegation situation. Again, it's going to be interesting to see how, this moves forward. But I think again, thinking about those questions, I think are the real thing, to, to continue to harp on. And I'm glad it obviously not for the situation, but I am glad that for the nature of these unfortunate circumstances to be presenting themselves, that we are pushing the narrative to have the conversations really
mm.
about these issues. So, we'll have to see what happens. But speaking of more allegations, y'all know we have to y'all you know we have to talk about Tyler. It's like
Hmm.
again, Tyler, come to the front.
Sister girl, come on.
Yeah, like come to the front. Y'all know how we do with Tyler. So if you don't know, the actor Christian Keys, claims that for his show actually, All the Queen's Men that is on BET and BET Plus, that Tyler Perry has allegedly tried to take over creative control of the series in ways that removed, or should I say undermined, his original role as creator and lead, kind of writer for the show. And so basically, he has said that, the created by, kind of credit was removed at some point. He had to go to the Writers Guild and Union to enforce like contractual credit rights and, just kind of things like that. And so now he's also wanting the public to know that the series took, since the series was took under Perry's influence, that if you've watched the show, if you notice where certain storylines became, as he says, quote unquote, weird, it's because they were no longer aligning with his original vision, kind of for the show. And because of that, the series is ending on BET Plus after I think like this is maybe like season 5, I believe. And
Mhm.
so he says, in all, he's going to shop around the show to other, places and things like that. But essentially, Christian Keys has called Tyler, just very shady, very corny for what he, does. And of course, if you're not familiar with All the Queen's Men, it's a drama, of course, like I say, based on Keys. It's based on his novel, Ladies' Night. And so it became one of like BET's like most like watch, scripted dramas, of course. And so, yeah, on the surface, we can, of course, look at this and talk about, Tyler and this incident about, creative credit, ownership, rights, and all that type stuff. But I think while that's a conversation, I think there's a more underlining conversation to being had because, of course, Tyler is also facing multiple like civil suits of misconduct from, gentlemen like we talked about, in our season one, the sexual harassment claim with Derek Dixon. If you are listening or watching us and you did not, hear or see that video, always go back and watch that. And then
Mhm.
since then, another claim has been made. I believe the gentleman is Mario Rodriguez. Um, you know, has come out with claims and, there's, filing, civil lawsuits and things like that. But yeah, just a larger conversation about as much as Tyler Perry is revered, in certain in, a lot of, circles. Is there such a thing as we have, previously talked about with Diddy and, with R. Kelly and you know, these figures who become just massively, massively uh, huge, and then they also come very empowered,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to other people. And again, that's not necessarily saying it's something directly that's his fault or anything like that. Again, we're here to talk about the allegations, the conflict that's going on. I'm not, here to demonize, Tyler Perry or anything like that. But it is just goes back to, these conversations that we have about it could be creative ownership. It can be, of course, like we talked about with Donnie just now, misconduct. And it's like, where does the conversation or the actions become just too, it just becomes too much for any single individual,
Mhm.
So just getting, kind of like your take on, like the whole Christian Keys aspect with the creative license, but then just even moving into more of, obviously Tyler Perry and the whole misconduct thing.
Yeah. On Tyler Perry's part, I'm not shocked. As someone who totes himself to be a self-made man,
Mm,
and only writer, only producer, only EP, the only one to do all the things. I don't necessarily see him as being open and willing to really share the spotlight with other people. And it's shocking because I remember, at least in the video that Christian Keys put out there about this, is that he said something about this has been going on since season one, and the show's now making season five. And I feel like Christian Keys made reference to this creative struggle before, publicly. So it's not something that, oh, why wait until now kind of thing for anyone who might be thinking that. Like he has spoken out on the issues before, and I think this is the first time it's really getting more traction outside of his own Instagram page.
Mhm.
But it sucks that he's had to fight for his own right to be a part of his own creation,
Mhm.
and to because these are allegations, but to feel as though that someone is pushing you out of something that is yours innately, that you created, I feel for him because I can only imagine how I would be if I was in that circumstance and someone told me the thing that I created is no longer mine. Like,
Mhm.
who are you to do that? And it sucks extra because it's like to this is related to Tyler Perry, but to be someone who purports themselves as being very pro-black, pro the person to really start a lot of black careers, here we are doing something against that. Here we are shutting down black creativity and not allowing space for it to grow or grow in its own story based off of the main person who created this. I get if we're doing what is it, interpolation, is that the word I'm looking for, of the series, and we're just making our own story based off of some of the characters. Now we just have a fanfic out here. That's fine and whatnot, but that's not what this is.
Right, right. And I think that when we talk about like credit and power here, like there's bigger, obviously, like we're talking about, like, there's bigger conversations to be had. I think Christian Keys and his experience really highlight how even when you are an established creator, you can struggle to protect your own artistic vision, like you just said.
Mm,
And I think particularly that becomes more nuanced when if you are in contract terms that are ambiguous or you're dealing with like studios that kind of like influence stuff over time. So it really becomes about this aspect of like collaboration versus control. And anytime you have a smaller creator or like partners with a very influential media mogul such as Tyler Perry is,
mm,
right? Lines can definitely be blurred between what is collaboration and what is domination. As we know, Tyler likes to be in control of all of his writing, directing, all this type stuff. And yes, even though he has made slight changes over time, that depends on where things are being marketed to. Certain networks that his projects are on, his name is on everything. Which, of
mm,
course, from a business sort of standpoint, yes, brother, good job. Because it's like we know what has been done to us in history, with wiping out or networks building shows on our backs just to cancel them. I mean, we went through a whole TV renaissance that, had nothing but black shows on. And then all of a sudden, like they disappeared. And it's because of the fact, when it came to network visibility and politics. You build things on the nature of Black people's back, and then you yank it. But when we get into public disputes like this, and it pushes us to have conversations about what does fair credit look like. Transparency and that creative leadership. And because Tyler has been such a long major figure in Black entertainment, both as a storyteller and a business leader. Controversies revolving him, whether or not they be legal or creative, carry larger implications
mm.
for how leadership and equity is seen in our community. So that's the one, and it's not to say like, viewing this in a whole like black on black crime, but it is to say like it's different because it's like, would we be still having the same conversation if this was a white actor that was
Mm.
coming about, would this even be happening, essentially, so yeah, I just, yeah, when it comes to collaboration and control, those lines can be very blurry.
And I think that is a good way of, looking at that perspective. For example, if Tyler Perry happened to be a white producer or, still have a studio all in his name, making billions, and even with having multiple black people come
Mm-hmm.
through that studio, will we be okay if that white studio started to take the credit of black writers' work? What
Mm-hmm.
would be okay if that white studio were to begin to, um, change the narratives that are not that were supposed to be black centered to be a little bit more white centered or centered only on under this scope and framework? We wouldn't be.
No.
So it's like I, I say black people in general, we have been conditioned in such a way to give way more grace to
Mm-hmm.
other black people than than they actually deserve. We can recognize all the great things that Tyler Perry has done for the community, and we can also stand firmly by that, but also recognize some of his practices are very harmful. Like you know, beyond this episode, beyond our last episode, then some time that I've mentioned how it is unfortunate that there's so many wonderful, phenomenal black writers out there that Tyler Perry does not employ. Like 2020. We was ready to flip tables. Well, we did flip tables in 2020, but we were ready to flip tables because HBO decided to let go of Lovecraft Country.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who could have literally came in and just bought out the contract and just, just produced it under their own studio?
Right.
And it's like, why not? That was a predominantly black cast, predominantly black writing room, predominantly black costumers, predominantly black team for videography and all of this. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, no. And I think, and again, it's not to demonize, Tyler for not doing it or for like his
Hmm.
decisions. I just think that, a lot of times what we have seen in the past is that his creativeness is also very ego driven.
Mm,
So and when you have something like that, you do get into this aspect where you believe that the decisions that you are making, yes, are right because they're right for you, which all of us do that. Of course we can only make the best decisions we can for us, but it is to say that when you have certain narratives that keep getting told because you know that you appeal to a certain market, then it's kind of like, you just milk it for all it's worth. Because I mean, essentially that's what he's done. And again, it is to give credit to him. Like it's kind of like to say Tyler has found the niche of what he does, and he knows that he appeals to a particular audience. And so anytime, he comes out with something, it's going to think. Just like for instance, I love how it's being made fun of in the mentions about when this new allegation came out, how all of a sudden within that same week you get the preview for like the next film, like Joe's college road trip trip or whatever. So essentially Joe, obviously being his character Medea's brother, is actually going to be the focal point and center character in this, in this kind of new movie that's coming out. And people have made, just funny comments. It's like, y'all ever notice when Tyler in the news about something that, oh, we always get this drop about, oh, here's the next, the next film or whatever to divert attention. And you know
Look,
what? My thing is like, if for any reason that is true, again, smart marketing. It's like, oh, while y'all focusing on this, here, let me dangle this carrot. Like, let's
listen,
concentrate on this.
another version of Medea goes to jail. I would be shocked.
Oh it's just and it's interesting that when I saw the trailer for it, it kind of brought up something else I was thinking of because somebody I had a conversation with somebody recently about they were asking me, well, what do I feel like is the difference between what Tyler does like with playing multiple characters versus like when Eddie Murphy has done it in Nutty Professor or Martin has done it on his show and other comedians and stuff like that. And I'm like, but you also, have to recognize like Tyler comes from a different, kind of background and retrospect when it comes to what he feels to believe is of comedy versus like legends like Martin and Eddie Murphy, right?
Mhm.
I've often always said like the reason why I may watch the Medea films or whatever and view Joe and other characters he may play as more caricatures is because they're not really given a point of view. They're not really given story. They're there to just be comedic relief. Versus when I watch Eddie Murphy, I mean, like, hello, when we think about Nutty Professor, genius. Genius. It took me, I was one of those people growing up watching the Nutty Professor. I had to learn that, oh no, this is actually him. And he's all of these characters in one scene. I didn't know that growing up. Like I
Exactly.
had to, and that goes to speak about his genius. Or when I'm watching Martin, whenever like Shanae is in a scene or she has like a central focus episode or when he's playing Otis and things like that, I forget, especially with the character of Shanae, like I forget that that is Martin.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like you're not just creating characters, you're actually creating characters and
Hmm.
they're not just there for just comedic release. Yes, they are funny, but they have some sort of insight that they're given, and I'm thinking that maybe that is the reason why all of a sudden after all of these years we're going to actually have a film that's centered on Joe. you know but again that delves into a whole kind of other topic and things like that. But yeah, I think it's interesting though, as we talk about this aspect of creative control again, collaboration, what that means, and
Hmm.
just all of that. So
Yeah. And I'm going to like jump into that little convo a little bit before we move on because it is worth having and of course not to down Tyler Perry because I know I do that very often. It's not about him,
there's
but
nothing new on this chair. There's nothing new on this platform.
this is not about the beef that I have with this man. But it does show the quality of acting ability, right? Like Tyler has his set characters that he does well because they're a subsect of his own personality.
Mhm.
Like Medea is based off of his grandmother, and you can copy mannerisms of a person that
Mhm.
you've been around for a very long time. I don't know if his grandma was like pow pow and everything, but whatever. If that's his grandmother, love it because I enjoy seeing this aspect of his grandmother. However, the ability to become a whole different person is
Mhm.
when you really step into the field of acting. And I've seen Tyler in different situations, and I will forever say that man makes a good villain. I keep forgetting what film it was that he was in, and he was a villain. Villain. I was like, oh, okay, I see you acting chops finally showing up. Okay, love it. Continue to do that. But like Eddie Murphy, like you, Tyrell. I was about to say Tyler. That is not you.
Mhm.
But like you, Tyrell, I also was like, what do you mean these are different people? Right? And I feel like it's beautiful that we got to get like films like The Nutty Professor. Because we those became staples in many households, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, we don't get as many of those created as we can have
Yeah.
today. And some of it is due to not providing space and room for those projects to be
Yeah.
had, which he has the capability of doing.
And also, just to throw a little nugget in there, also, when we think about comedy legends, like Eddie Murphy, Martin, and, just all of these people who have created such blueprints, I'm not quite sure Tyler has that. I mean, like, yes, Tyler has
Mm-mm.
the, to me, in my retrospect, and again, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but of course, Tyler has the money to pay people. I mean, actors have consistently said that the reason why they work with him is because, like, Tyler is the first person, like, to pay them what they're worth. However, is there really any films, even as popular as Medea is and has been a staple in culture? Has anyone ever really said that like Tyler's work is something to be studied?
No, not that I know of.
I don't know. And
Mm-mm.
again, I'm not gonna, just say that
Mm.
that's blatantly not true, but it's kind of like you also have to think about when you're putting art out there, or you putting art out there to last a moment because you know that this is how fans will react, or is this something that is going to last, a good lifetime? And even from the nature of what Tyler does, even with the nature of his acting, he may have chosen to, just be more behind the camera because he knows that Medea and Joe and those characters are what he's in his pocket for. I remember I've really only ever seen Tyler like in one other role, out one or two other roles outside of that. And to me, I'm like that kind of, I don't know, that kind of speaks volumes because to me, if you literally have the platform to create your own characters, to have
Mm-hmm.
yourself as a different character, and you don't do it.
Mm.
And so I think that that aspect of business, has foretaken. And so instead, he wants to create, all these, opportunities for other people. But, I've often always said the thing about when you have great actors is that the way that they don't get pigeonholed is that you need to see them in other lights. I do the same thing when I talk about Kevin Hart. I'm like, I get it because, a lot of people don't necessarily like Kevin. They don't like to say, think that he's a good comedian or good actor. But the times where I have seen him doing something other than what he usually does, he usually is in the pocket of. But because of the fact that
Mm.
audience get so used to seeing him one way, it's like those
Yeah.
movies and those films get made far and few in between. Like I love the movie where he was the caretaker to Robert De Niro. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. But then him being the single father in that other movie that was on Netflix. Wonderful role to see him in. But do people talk about those roles? No.
Nope. And that's a good point. And I started to really, dive a little bit deeper into what things that Tyler Perry created that I would actually bring into a classroom to really dissect. His plays will definitely make
Yeah,
great conversation, great research for anything dealing with the intersection between Black culture and religion, because
yeah,
we can go all up in that. Like I could see it. And also for family dynamics, the Diary of a Mad Black Woman, let's go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and do that one. We can go ahead and bring that one into a classroom.
yeah.
But outside of that, I don't see too many. And something that um I started to think about when you were speaking is I wonder if Tyler lacks the eye of seeing the potential in some of the works that's been presented to him. Because even with Christian Keys, it took years for him to even get that out there. And I don't know if it's because the book sales had its own, like, it
Mm,
flourished on that end, and that was like, oh, if this can sell, let me give this a try. Or if it was because there was some allegations about
mm,
that the reason behind him getting that show was Christian Keys keeping his mouth closed about some other things. Don't
mm,
know how true that is, but the allegations of the gossip is out there.
mm,
But seeing how successful that first season was,
yeah,
now seeing it, now that being a reality, oh, now this is something that I feel like I need to take, or this is something that I can make more money off of,
mm,
because I now see the value in it, but I didn't see the value in it before. And I wonder if it's that I'm the only one who can do it, that I'm the only one that can be just as great, which prevents him from seeing the quality work that others really put out here in their art.
yeah. And now it's really become one of those things where usually the way I think we see with most directors or most filmmakers is kind of like it's like their early works are usually more of the like, oh, this is like my testing work where, like, oh, okay, I didn't have the budget for this and, like stuff like that. It's not bad, but you can tell, like, okay, yeah, this was done a little bit like earlier in their career. They've learned and they've grown and stuff like that. To me, it's kind of like Tyler does things backwards, where it's like, if you really
Actually.
think about like you say, the plays or even like Diary of a Mad Black Woman, Medea's Family Reunion, like when those movies came out, just blockbuster hits, and also because of the casting, because everybody wanted to work with him. But it's kind of like over the years, it's kind of like, okay, you've made all of this, fortune, you're stepping behind the scenes, you're giving these people opportunities and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, like the nature of like the productions kind of gets
Mhm.
worse over time. And I think it also depends on the platform because I actually just watched um Ruth and Boaz on Netflix with Soraya from Empire and Tyler Lepley from Tyler's the Haves and the Have-Nots. And that was to me, like, that was a good movie because again it was telling like a traditional Bible story and taking these characters, making them black, for first and foremost, have Felicia Rashad in it, and stuff like that. But it was done under Tyler's studios, but it was a Devon Franklin production.
Mm.
And then so when we think about, okay, well, maybe that's where the pocket of where Tyler needs to be. Like, yeah, he can come out with his own stuff every now and then and, stuff like that, like he did on Netflix with the whole Medea's Destination wedding. And, that was out there. But it's kind of like, but when we do see where, oh, okay, this is his studios producing this, but this is someone else's work. Now the quality tends to be different. We're looking at much more development. And I think that that's why how it's always been rumored that there will be another Sister Act that will come out. It has always been known that if it does, I think Whoopi Goldberg has co-signed it, and she has made it very clear that she will be the one that's in charge that's in charge of it, even though Tyler wants to do it. So, and Miss Whoopi don't play so
At all.
at all. So, I think that maybe that's where the pocket. I'm not going to say where he needs to be, but maybe that's where the projection of him goes into the future. Like if he just creates the studio and hopefully creates the opportunities, like let other people shine in their own production, companies.
Hmm.
Because again, I think the part about being a creative is that you want to move the culture forward in a positive
Exactly.
way.
Like allegations aside, because they are important.
Mhm.
If Tyler Perry didn't have all that going on, I would not have minded if he like purchased Tubi and funded a lot of independent work,
Yeah.
especially that of Black people, and use that as a platform to highlight more of productions that he wants to greenlight and bring them more mainstream, and you get the test pilot over there. Oh, this
Mhm.
show picks up. Okay, maybe I can start licensing this work over
Mhm.
here for the next season. And, once it's completely done, oh, y'all have full rights after that. Like, come on. But, I'm not on his team. He didn't hire me. So,
Yeah.
but please don't hire me because I don't need none of that. That foolishness over here.
But speaking of creativity and collaboration, we could not end our first episode without talking about a positive note of
Yeah.
2025 that we would love to just, review really quick and, to just end on for our first episode back. As you can see, I'm wearing my merch here, talking about the wonderful aspect of The Boy Is Mine tour that happened, Brandy and Monica. Oh my God. Like this tour was
Mhm.
just everything. Now, I would like to preface that unfortunately I was not able to go see the show in person. But as Vernon, as my close personal friend and colleague knows, I have watched every single show on YouTube. So if you have not seen the show, I highly recommend, and I highly recommend just going through all 32 shows. It's okay if it's kind of like you feel like it's the same. You never get tired of it.
We're here for the vibes and good
We're
feels.
here for the vibes and good feelings. But no, I just really appreciated of these two, ladies for all that they have given to music. If anybody knows me, I am a Brandy, stan. She's my favorite singer of all time. And I just really appreciated almost, after almost 30 years, like this was like history in the making, groundbreaking moment for, your classic R&B fans, kind of like returning to like that spotlight and just to praise the production was really done nice. At first I didn't know, like when the tour was first introduced, I didn't know like how they were going to do it. I didn't know like if like they were going to trade off about like who co-headlines what night or whatever. But to the fact that they start the show together, kind of going back and forth before they get into like their whole separate acts and coming back to do the tribute to Whitney and just hearing all of their just a lot of their great hits. It was so well done. So this tour was so nostalgic. It was fulfilling. People, of course, raved about, the tour. I know a lot of people say that, I went broke going to multiple shows, but it's all right. I'll recover. I'll recover. But yeah, it was just such a nice feeling. And I think for a lot of people, the reason why they flock to it, not just because they love, both of these ladies, but kind of having that feeling like, okay, this may never happen again. So go see it. Go see it.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, just giving props to both of them. Again, the production, I appreciated throughout the cities that they went to. They were also paying homage to other artists as well. So you got to see a lot of artists take the stage. From Missy Elliott, LL Cool J. You had certain people that joined them on tour when, unfortunately, the lady Money Long, I'm not quite familiar with her too much, but she ended up being ill. So she could not, do, her segment. So they got some other people in, which to me kind of fit better. Maya coming out, to do some openings. I'm like, yeah, no offense to Money Long and, everything like that. I'm sure she has her fans and everything, but, like, we in the 90s girly, kind of era here. Like, this is what this should have been. Loved all the aspects of Kelly Rowland being with them, on tour. And it created so many moments for, her and other people as well. One of the most heartfelt shows that I've watched was, I think, either the second to last show or maybe the third to last show, I can't remember, where she actually got to sing in front of her father for the first time. So her father was actually there. So it was just such a great show. And I can go on and on, but just wanted to know, like, like what do you just feel like if you either went to the show or watched the show, or what you just feel about when we have moments like this, that are really for the culture, that this is going to be something that, you remember.
Mhm. I think this tour was a beautiful thing, and it was much needed in terms of like, if anybody who knows Monica and Brandy know about the beef that they had over the years, right? And to see that even though we had this disagreement that we fought before, that we are open to creating an environment that we can move past it, that we don't have to hold those grudges in our, well, old age at this point. We're not teenagers no more.
Exactly. And it's so interesting because when you look at the narrative of their history, and I like how a lot of times Monica speaks about this, is that
Hmm.
like she says, there's so many rumors and interpretations, like of their history that, like she says, they didn't even know each other really on the Boy is
Hmm.
Mine, the when it came out, like, trekking through history, it's kind of like, yes, when Rodney Jerkins and Brandy were, of course, working, on her Never Say Never album, Brandy has often admitted that when she heard the song The Boy Is Mine, she liked it, but she felt like something was missing from it. And
Mm.
so she felt like it needed like a collaboration. And so she immediately thought of Monica. And it just so happens that, yeah, Monica was really up for it. She, as Monica details, she flew out to record her part. They kind of did the video, but they didn't necessarily really like, chop it up too much, because I'm
Mhm.
probably sure both of them being busy women, things like that. And again, I'm obviously there may have been some tension or whatever around it, but as Monica kind of details, and regardless whether or not you believe this or not, but what she kind of details is that what they needed after all these years was to finally just sit down and have a conversation. And like she says, a lot of times through their history, people have always tried to like pit them in the same circle
Mhm.
against each other. Yes, them two, Aaliyah, were like the it girl like of the night of the 90s. Like they were like the main faces of the 90s. So it's like they kind of detail always trying to pit them against each other. Like she says, if I was going to like an award show, they made sure that I knew that, like, oh, Brandy would be there, or like just doing all of these things, like talking around them. And like they said, in the nature of their production, you don't even recognize that you're having conversations about children. Like, they were 17 and 18 years old
Right.
when these things, kind of were happening. And I'm not going to say unfortunately, but the person who I think kind of, there's two people who I think are really should have a highlight into why this tour actually even got pushed, and that's Ray J being Brandy's brother, and Ariana Grande, because Ray J has for years, ever since the versus battle, because their versus battle, gained, widespread acclaim and things like that. Ray J has always promoted, for Brandy and Monica to go on tour together. And one of the things that I constantly always got on Ray about, I was like, Ray, hear what you're saying. Yes, what you're saying is great. Thinking like a business person, you know how much, that would be not just nostalgia for the culture, but revenue being brought in, all that. But I'm like, but Brandy and Monica have to have that conversation. They have to want
Mhm.
that. They have to figure out when's the right time for that. And it came when Ariana Grande, um, wanted to do this remix, which is technically to me not a remix, it's really like a whole new song of The Boy Is Mine. And they both, Brandy and Monica, have said in the interview, they said when they reunited to do, that rendition with Ariana Grande, that it was that time. It was that time for them to, sit down, have that conversation and be like, yeah, let's get this tour going. And
Mhm.
it's evident that they have become so much closer, over the years. Like I think Monica said even one time, like especially like during the pandemic and everything like that, like she and Brandy talk more than in that span of time that they had like in years.
Mhm.
So again, as you were saying, it's nice to see like these two women as we've grown up with their music and their catalogs. We, hear rumors and, these kind of things about, the beef and stuff like that to really come together in sisterhood and womanhood to give people something that is for the culture, but it's also for themselves as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the different moments along the tour where they themselves corrected some of the misinformation about what was going on. I believe it was Brandon who got sick or something like that,
Mhm.
and Monica, did her portion, but she still ended things quickly.
Mhm.
And people were online talking about, oh, there's definitely some beef that somebody was slighted, blah 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 blah. And I think Monica came up that's like, no, girlfriend was back there not doing well.
Yeah.
So I wanted to really check in on her, but I also wanted to make sure people had somewhat of a show
Right.
that they paid for. So I came out there, did that, but this entire time I'm worrying about if she's okay.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and all the rumors that happened with the first, Chicago show, my thing has always been this. Look, if you that upset about it, I get it. But it's like because two things ended up happening. My thing was like, okay, y'all have willingly admitted that you got to see a good percentage of the show. So it's kind of like it's not one of those things that happen at the very beginning of the show
Hmm.
and then like, oh, okay, yeah, because again I can understand like you can pay money for this show. It's kind of like okay, but that's not like Brandy and Monica's problem. That's a like ticket problem if you want your money back. And to me, my thing is like, if you really want to see the show that bad, then just go another night and pay for another. I'm sorry, at the end of the day, people cannot put wanting to give you a show over their health. And even the other rumors that were floating around, like I heard rumors like, oh, they were like Brandy was throwing like a diva fit because they had something going wrong with sound check. Now, again, putting this into context, right? Even if you don't know Brandy or don't like Brandy, it's kind of like, what sort of professional do you know throws a tantrum and ends a concert and just completely walks off stage because something's going on with the sound? Yes, as you're beginning a tour, yes, you're going to have certain things that happen with sound. Again, the tour is going to get better as you go along because you're going to work out certain kinks. But again, these ladies have been in the game for decades. Like, what sort of musical professional do you know that is going to throw a fit on stage because something may be a little off with the sound? So this, like, that narrative doesn't even make sense. Even if did not know Brandy, I did not know her or her music or anything like that. I would never in my life believe, just automatically think that, oh, because she had walked off stage, that, oh, it's because she was throwing a tantrum because of
Hmm.
a sound issue. Like,
Look, personally, I feel like even if that were to be the case, I don't care. Like, am I going to be able to still see the show or what? Like, and
exactly.
if a person, she has the right to be upset for what?
Mhm.
Because I'm here at this establishment hoping for everything to have already been tested, to already
Mhm.
be ready, and here
Mhm.
we are 2 hours before the show actually starts and things are not working. What's going on here? We need accountability. We need somebody to get onto this. And as Beyonce once said, somebody's getting fired.
And speaking of, and we're gonna get to the whole Beyonce aspect in a minute, because
Oh
and,
yeah, that
and
did
my
happen.
thing about too, like the thing that happened in Chicago, I'm like, all right, even Brandy came on stage and she apologized. Now, no matter if you think that was genuine or that was damage control, look, you can either take it or accept it, but at the end of the day, we moving on.
Exactly.
Now, getting to like, of course, when Monica and her performed in Atlanta, Monica brought out a lot of artists. When they both performed in California, you had a lot of people that was giving Brandy her flower. Actually, Kaylani literally gave Brandy her flowers on stage. That was such a nice moment. Now, of course, one of the big things that people talked about with the nature of the concert, you had everybody that was attending that concert, and of course, Queen B, Jay Z, again, all these people, coming out to support. So going back to Ray J. Ray makes this video about how he felt Jay Z and Beyonce were disrespectful because they took pictures and everything like that. Because, of course, again, Kelly was, opening, had her set and everything like that. Monica is very cool with them. But apparently, which I did not know, there has been rumored to be some standing beef between Brandy and Beyonce. And so they even have this clip where Beyonce is coming like this way backstage and Brandy is coming this way. And all of a sudden, it's almost like, and the video is actually really funny because it's almost like Beyonce just like disappears as like Brandy is walking through like with her people. And the narrative was that, oh, Beyonce purposely like avoided taking pictures or anything like that with Brandy because they don't fool with each other like that. And so Ray J put out this whole post about, how you gonna come to, people's concert and not just, even say what's up and, things like that. And so my thing with that whole situation was this. Ray, even if that is true, again, we don't know what's true, what's not. My whole thing is, Ray, even if that is true or not, why do you feel the need to speak on it? Brandy has not said anything. Beyonce has not said anything. To me, if they have some sort of beef or some sort of thing why they don't like each other, let them two ladies speak on that.
Hmm.
So no matter what it is that you feel, again, and this goes back to a whole conversation of emotional regulation. Again,
Talk
and
about it.
I just blame Ray entirely because I understand as a family member, especially as a brother, I see where he coming from. If you feel like, hey, we supposed to be cool, and you up here coming to part of my sister's show and you don't even say what's up. Like, I get why you may be in your feelings about it, but again, Ray, we are promoting a concert. We're promoting sisterhood and womanhood and things like that. We don't need to be starting, any type of narratives like that. If Brandy has something to say about Beyonce, let her speak on that. If Beyonce has something to say about Brandy, let her speak on that. And it is not, again, even if the rumors are true that they have some sort of beef, Beyonce and Jay-Z are not under any type of obligation to
Yeah.
speak to Brandy, you know. So again, I did not, like that whole thing. Again, I'm glad that it did not detract from the whole nature of the concert. And I'm glad that nothing came out where Brandy spoke about it, Beyonce spoke about it, because it was just going to be one of those things. It was in the gossip for 10 minutes, and now obviously everybody moved on.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. And it it is it's hilarious. I feel like you said, it has absolutely nothing to do with you. And I wish people would really sit in that message, because oftentimes people tend to put themselves in business that does not necessarily concern them, and we need to ask ourselves why. I get you want to be there for your sibling, you want to make sure that your sibling's being respected, but did your sibling tell you that she felt disrespected? And if so, okay, I feel some type of way. Is it okay for me to speak on your behalf? Can we at least have that conversation?
and and that's a broader conversation about when you take the nature of feeling offended on behalf of other people. And sometimes, again, it takes, some people feel like, well, for some people who are more introverted or shy or, whatever this, they may have certain ways of dealing with people. I'm like, people are grown. How they choose to deal with situations is going to be on them, you know.
Mhm.
So yeah, in all, I was glad that, like, okay, that was talked about for 10 minutes and, we moving on. But again, just in general though, I was so glad about all of the, uh, you know, stars that came out. I do think that, we had some missed opportunities for some songs that I would have loved because, like, I love the rendition of Slow Jam with Monica and Usher. I know that Usher came to one of the shows. The fact that he has songs with both Brandy and Monica, I thought that, that would have been a good treat to do. The fact that when Maya ended opening for them, Keisha Cole actually came and opened, the last few nights. I would have loved for Keisha and Monica to do their song Trust. That's one of my favorite songs. Um, and just yeah, I just thought that certain opportunities were missed. Even Mackay Pfeiffer, he did a video where he was like in front of the Boy Is Mine tour bus, and I was getting excited. I was like, oh my god, it would be so cool if they had Mackay come out during the Boy Is Mine, because obviously that's where they end the show, and it would be so cool if he comes out because if you are not familiar, Mackay Pfeiffer is the boy in the Boy Is
Mhm.
Mine video. So that would have been so funny if he had came out, like on stage, and things like that. So certain opportunity I feel like, was missed or whatever. But all in all, it was just such a wonderful, wonderful show.
Yeah. Hopefully there's going to be a redo, but they don't owe it to us at all, which more people need to also recognize. The people that you enjoy don't owe you anything. They
No,
gave you enough already. They
no.
gave you the memories.
Whatever it is, so whatever it is that, they choose to give, just you either gonna be happy or shut up.
Exactly.
You know.
And or get your money back if that's what you really need to do. Like when I was disappointed about that tour with Anita Baker, was I mad at Anita? Absolutely not, because I did my research beforehand. And I even went to the concert knowing this is iffy. I don't know for sure if she's going to be showing up or not, because she has not said this on her social medias, okay? She has not announced it on her. If the Empress hasn't said it herself, it's probably not happening. But I was like, let me have faith
Yeah.
and let's see what happens. And she didn't show up. And I was like, you know what? I knew the signs. I appreciate the signs. I'm still gonna get my money back because hello. Like,
All right.
meanwhile, other people online, how dare this old bitch? Oh my God.
But yeah, but we have also so much to look forward to, just like for R&B fans, to look forward to with like, certain tours that are happening. Like I know like the Millennium Tour is happening with like Omarion and Bow Wow in them. We have there's another tour that is getting ready to oh yeah, the tour with Tony Braxton, Boys to Men, and New Edition.
Pause. What?
And so yeah,
What?
we have a lot of tours. Now I will say that, I'm hoping that the way that the tour with Tony Braxton, New Edition, and Boyz II Men is kind of promoted a little bit differently because I've been seeing some discrepancies with the way that that's being promoted with like new edition kind of like at the top because I mean technically it is a new edition tour but because I think it's called the new edition way or something like that. However, I kind of feel some sort of way kind of like how some other people are like I don't like the fact that like they are getting like the more I don't know like exposure as opposed to Boys to Men and Tony Braxton as to say like they're bigger than the both of them. And again, it's not a competition or anything like that, but it's just certain things that came out in the initial marketing of the
Hmm.
tour. I was kind of side eyeing because I'm like, Tony Braxton and Boys to Men are like to me just as prominent you know
Hmm.
as New
So,
Edition. So I'm like,
no, no offense to New Edition. Love them. Great music. But I can name a lot more Tony and
mm-hmm,
a lot more Boys to Men.
mm-hmm,
And a lot more Tony compared to both of them together, to be honest. Because
exactly.
I love me some Tony Braxton. The Spanish guitar still gets me. It still gets me. It just touches you.
So yeah,
But
we got a
like,
lot to look forward to when it comes to like and getting back to just some good R&B because of course we know we haven't had that in quite a while. So
mm-mm.
it's like yes, give it to us, give it to us.
Child, the way I'm so happy you brought up this tour, and I'm looking up tickets and seeing where it's going to be near me.
Look in the middle of the show, looking up to
Y'all can judge me, because I don't care.
look and then look if for any reason we drive up ticket sales, look we should get a profit.
Okay,
Look,
listen. Child, I haven't been to a good R&B concert since it was that old school R&B tour that they had going on. I went to Cincinnati for it, but I remember wasn't New Edition there? They might have been. I just remember when Tevin Campbell came on and performed. I was in it. I was in it because I been knowing my Tevin, but I was ready to fight everybody in the crowd when they were just like, "I'll do that," and he was like. I know that I have more than just that song. Like you had to tell the people in the crowd that he has more than just that one song because they just wanted "Can We Talk?" How dare y'all disrespect this genius like this?
so glad like when I attended Essence Fest some years ago because I've been attending Essence Fest since I was 10 and eventually stopped just because like
Oh, that
I got out of it. But like one particular year, oh like when they had Tevin performing in the Super Lounge, like I was like that close up, to the stage. So I have like great footage
delay.
of Tevin. I'm like, yes, give it Tevin.
I need to go back to Essence has been on some stuff since
Oh
last
yeah,
year
yeah,
apparently,
yeah.
but
Yeah, that's another show.
yeah, we don't got this. Any last things for this episode?
Oh, just appreciate, being back. We have so many great things, we're gonna deliver to, our listeners, our watchers. So I'm excited to see about, things that come up, things that we get into. But yeah, I think we're gonna go
Yeah.
ahead and wrap it up.
Also, I need to text you about something that I really want us to talk about for the next show. It was like right there. And watch, as soon as I do the little closing statement, it's going to be like, Vernon, this is what you wanted to talk about, but it's okay. I,
Everybody that knows us, y'all know we on here chaotic. Y'all on the
listen,
ride. As y'all
That
be.
ADHD is crazy. It's crazy. I swear. Swear for God. But anyways, thank y'all so much for tuning in to Melanin and Moonlight, your late night space for deep, thought-provoking conversations about sex, culture, and the well-being of the Black community. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the podcast to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep the vibes flowing and your mind open. Bye.
Hey.